Okay, so before we start, I actually want to change a couple of things. Actually, I think the camera should start a little bit further back. And also, as you can see, our widgets disappear at the end. So what we want to do first is go into our RNDR rock explode, append a time shift, put it to clamp to last, put it to frame 120. Right, so now you can see it will clamp it to the last frame. So now they will stay there the entire shot. So the other thing that I want to do is the camera is kind of too close maybe in the beginning. So I'm probably going to say I'm going to move it out, maybe something like this. And maybe let's move it upwards and downwards a little bit. Let's move it a little bit lower over here. So I'm not completely happy with the widgets in the camera, but we can always change stuff later. And of course, if you're gonna do this properly for yourself, you might wanna like take some more time to tweak stuff. Like I did a ton of iterations when I did my own version. But of course, right now I'm just going through all of the steps again, and we'll always end up with a slightly different results. It's just the way it's gonna go, or the way it is. Like if you do it again, it's always gonna look a little bit different. But you can just tweak it to your heart's content to make something that you're happy with. So let's start setting up the pyro. So for the pyro, let's just make a new, like just a completely new sim. I know we have this one over here from our R&D scene, but we want quite a different type of explosion, right? So let's just make these two red. So we know that these are not the ones that we're going to use. Let's just make a new geometry network. So a new geometry. Let's call it pyro score explosion, something like that. Let's just dive in here. And then just let's make our own new pyro. So let's make a sphere. It's a ghost or object. And let's position this in the correct spot. So I guess this is fine. Like this is, as you can see, this is why we're working in the center, because now this is already quite in a good spot. So you can just do something like that. And then let's make a pyro source. And we want to source fuel. And the annoying thing is this, but like you cannot really initialize it on fuel. You need to click something else and then put it back. We don't really necessarily need density. We just need temperature and fuel because we're going to use a combustion setup. So essentially what combustion is in pyro is you source fuel. So like gasoline, for example, in real life, and then you add temperature. And then if the fuel gets to a certain temperature, then it's going to ignite. And then and then that will in turn create flames, which will in turn create smoke. So we don't necessarily need to source density as well. We will be sensing some sourcing some density, by the way. We're going to source some additional density from our widgets to create like nice little trails, but we don't really necessarily need to do it well like on here. Yeah, so I'm just going to take over these settings that I had on my original. I forget what, so 1.7. I think I did originally use the shelf tools to set the whole thing up. So what we can do is there is a attribute noise. So by the way, let's first rasterize these, and then we can have a better look at what the rasterization will do. And our pyro source, we can put it to surface scatter or to volume scatter. So it just kind of depends what you're after. I originally had surface scatter. I'd say probably volume scatter would make more sense, but it doesn't really matter that much. So let's use a rasterize. So volume rasterize attribute. And in here, we can start rasterizing all of the attributes that I have. So what do we want to rasterize? Well, I want to rasterize fuel, and I want to rasterize the temperature. That. So voxel size should be smaller. We're probably going to link that up to the voxel size of our pyro sim later. So for this, now it really doesn't matter that much. And let's just put an out. Oh, no, not that. Let's put a null. Call it out fuel, not fuel. And then we can also use the attribute noise. Put it in here. And then we can, and maybe if you want to see this better, we should probably also do it on density. It's just going to be easier. Let me see how I set it up in the original one. So fuel temperature, right, like that. 1D noise. Let's do it animated. Yeah, you can see it animating through the thing. Let's say I'm just going to match some settings that I had from my original thing. That was 1.7 to 0.7. So that's also what we're using there. And then I had a much smaller element size. Like that, and then we can create a ramp downwards. Okay. So let's see. Let's maybe see how what difference it would make if we do surface scatter. Let's just go for this. We can always change it later. All right, so let's make a dot network. Let's also open up our thing on the other side. And then let's just dive in there. I'm also gonna do one. I'm gonna check on my original. So I have my my original scene on the other screen. That's why my mouse is often going to the right. I'm just gonna keep my other scene on the right, so I can sort of copy over some stuff while I'm explaining, or just not go so yeah. So let's do a pyro solver, and we're just going to use the regular pyro solver, not the sparse one. In this case, it also doesn't really matter that much because we just have, I mean, a pyro thing in one location. So, and also our pyro sim isn't really the heaviest in this case because we don't want to make it too heavy anyway. So let's do a smoke object. So if you're doing pyro, this is the solver, and the solver stores his data in this thing. So essentially it's solving, and this thing is gonna store everything. All right, so probably wanna do, and the only thing I always dislike about doing a pyro sim inside of SOPs is that you cannot really show other objects from the top level, which is a little bit annoying. So maybe what we want to do is maybe we already want to bring in our ground as a collision object, because if we do that, then we can see our ground over here, and then it's going to be probably a little bit easier to see where we want to do everything. So let's go into where we did our landscape, and let's check our second view. Hide other object. So that's going to be this one. And we want to do a static object. Merge it in as first. That's in this static object. That's all right. So let's put object path to this one. We don't really need to load the actual obj. Then we want to do, you know what? Let's actually make an actual collision geometry here. It's probably, and we have some more control. So let's just, in our landscape, let's make a thing here. Let's do collision source. Second input is going to be the VDB. So let's, and then the first input is going to be the, so this is going to be the geometry. Geo is going to be the VDB. Right, so now we can say, let's put obj path, and normally that would be your top level thing, but I'm just going to put this one in. I don't have any object, any world space transformations. So this generally extracts world space transformations on your object. And then sub path would be this. And then in collisions, let's put it to volume collisions. It's the default anyway, and let's put our VDB as a proxy no, not file. Let's put our VDB as a proxy volume. So then it will use this thing as the proxy volume, at least if we say this, to put this to volume sample. So now instead of using this thing, it will use the VDB that we create over here on the right. And now let's look at our pyro. So now we can see this in the viewport. So now it's then we at least have an idea of how big we should make our pyro object. So let's I always confuse it. Like in Flip, you need to select the solver, and in pyro you need to select the object in order to do the scale. Which is like, and I've never really understood why they sort of made a difference there, but I mean, whatever. So yeah, let's make this, I guess, 10. Let's see, probably bigger, 20, something like that. And let's do it something like that. All right. So that looks, I guess, somewhat okay. Let's turn off our simulation and move backwards. Maybe want it to be even bigger. It's 25 by 25. Something along those lines. All right. So let's look on our pyro solver. So, all right. This is our pyro solver. So let's do a source. So let's source some stuff. So volume source. Sources go over here on the right. So we need to go back to our pyro. Let's put it in there, and then I guess source fuel. And it's gonna source fuel, temperature, and val. We don't have any velocity on it, so we can just turn that off. And let's see. Wow, it's beautiful. Oh, that's it, guys. We're done. This is the perfect simulation. But I mean, it's working. So probably what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a gas resize container. So gas resize fluid dynamic. I'm gonna put those in the pre-solve. Let's see if it works. Yet, let's put one delay frame. So now it does work. So then it will sort of delay by one frame. So then at least it gets time to source. So it sources one frame, and then the resize will kick in. We might need to tweak some of those settings later, because you can see, we already need to do that probably, because you can see it gets sort of cut off. Probably want more padding. Just put the padding up everywhere. And let's turn off on our resize. Let's turn off clap to maximum bounds. If we do that, then it can just scale beyond our maximum boundaries. So you can see now it can even go outside the boundaries that we set. All right, so that's it. So let's start configuring the pyro solver, and let's add some micro solvers.